Will Abrego Garcia be sent to Liberia as punishment, retaliation, and vindictiveness for bringing a vindictive prosecution motion against the Trump administration? Is he going to go to Liberia before the end of the month, before Judge Xinis has an opportunity to weigh in Maryland, before Judge Crenshaw in the Middle District of Tennessee holds his hearing, his trial about vindictive prosecution on November 4 and 5? Is the irony lost on anyone? Not us. We cover it on Legal AF, the podcast. And here's a clip.
Let's talk about what's going on with Abrego Garcia, Middle District of Tennessee. Remember, there's two cases with Abrego, the Tennessee case and the Maryland case. The Maryland case is not a criminal case. That case was filed by Abrego, where he was the petitioner first to be returned from El Salvador, where he was sent to a concentration camp. And then that court retained jurisdiction to try to continue to provide at least constitutional protections and safeguard for all the torture and terror the Trump regime was trying to do and the pain they were inflicting upon him. So that court retained jurisdiction over things like deporting Abrego to other countries, removing Abrego from this prison to that prison. So that's what happens in this Maryland court. Then in Tennessee, when Trump had Abrego finally brought back to the United States after saying, I'm never going to do that. And then Trump literally would show altered photos that had the letters MS and the numbers 1-3 on Abrego's hand. They then did a criminal prosecution against Abrego for a traffic stop that happened 3 or 4 years ago, where they said, you're involved in human trafficking. At the traffic stop, he wasn't even arrested. He wasn't detained. And I guess the allegation now is that the people who were in the van, they were working in St. Louis as well. And Abrego was driving with a group of undocumented individuals to another state. Who knows who these people are? The highway patrol person in Tennessee didn't arrest Abrego, but then they tried to be like, you see, he's a human trafficker. And they tried to imply he's a gang member. Not imply, they basically said it. He's a sex trafficker. He's a gang trafficker. This is what they're doing. He's a smuggler of children. And Abrego's like, oh, if you're prosecuting me, you better show the evidence about what that is. And then the government's like, yeah, no, let's just send him to another country. Let's just get rid of him. And Abrego's like, no, you filed this criminal case against me, so let's fight this case. Vindictive prosecution motion is filed by Abrego. The court makes a finding of vindictive prosecution at the threshold of, yes, you've made a showing that the prosecution of Abrego was vindictive as a response to Donald Trump finally retaliating for bringing him back to the United States, ordering that this prosecution take place, that Todd Blanche and Emile Bove at the DOJ were intimately involved. And so the court said, because you've made a showing, time for discovery. So Abrego said, great. Todd Blanche, you've been out there leading the charge, saying I'm a terrorist and I'm a gang member, directly. Yes, you're the deputy attorney general. And normally I wouldn't get the deposition of someone so high up in the DOJ. But this is an extraordinary case where you're out there making these comments about me. So if you're making these comments and Emile Bove, show up. Time for your deposition. So Abrego Garcia notices the deposition pursuant to the court order finding vindictive prosecution to depose Todd Blanche. So Todd Blanche wants to avoid that at all costs. That deposition is supposed to take place in the next 10 days. So what does the Department of Justice do? In the Maryland case, not the Tennessee case, because the Maryland case is about the deportations and all of that, they do notice of deportation to Liberia. And the day before, or a few days before Todd Blanche would have his deposition taken, the Trump DOJ's gambit right now is, dude, let's just send Abrego to Liberia. That will moot the criminal case that we brought against him. That case goes away. If that case goes away, there's no discovery into Blanche or Emile Bove, and we get rid of Abrego and we send him to Liberia and never hear from him again. I think Abrego goes, if you send me to Liberia, they're going to kill me there. Someone's going to kill me in Liberia. I'm going to wake up one day, probably shot. Basically, if you send me anywhere at this point, I'm probably going to get shot and killed or disappeared somewhere, with someone thinking that that's a way to cozy up to Bukele in El Salvador or Trump and their authoritarian machinations. So Here you have Todd Blanche, Emile Bove, Trump, and others making these comments about Abrego. Abrego saying, okay, you're saying these things about me in violation of what's supposed to take place in federal court. Well, then just show up for a deposition. The same way, just think about this, the same way Jack Smith is saying, I want to voluntarily do it in public. Let's go. Let's do it. Now, the Trump officials in Abrego's case are saying, we don't even want to keep pursuing the criminal case against you. Why wouldn't you want to? If you believe he's a MS-13 gang member, sex trafficking, child predator, whatever you want to say he is, wouldn't you want to prosecute him in the case, have him guilty, throw him in jail? I would want that. If he did those things, I want the guy prosecuted to the fullest extent. But now you wanted to send him to Liberia and not do the criminal case anymore. And then Todd Blanche doesn't want to sit for a deposition. I just want everybody listening and watching to remove politics from it and just think of that basic logic. Who wants to be in public? Who wants to do it in private while attacking and eroding our constitutional norms? That should tell you everything about what's going on here. And then I link that to what's happening in Chicago, because there the Border Patrol is also desperately trying to have their agents not show up and hide and avoid depositions. And go back to our first segment, I guarantee you, Popak, that these Trump officials are not, after wanting the smoke, they're not going to want the smoke now that those cases are filed and they have to be under oath and sit for depositions. They're whiny. Here's the thing. No one's saying that they have to be, tough guy or tough gal in the first place and do these things. But when you then do it and then you're afraid to deal with what you did, that's one of the things about MAGA that just pisses me off. You did it. Now deal with it like a responsible person, or don't do it in the first place.
So here's what I would comment on now that you put together the whole mosaic. Judge Xinis better get off her backside and do something within the next 72 hours to stop Abrego Garcia from being sent to Liberia, 3,000 miles away from his home and his U.S. citizen wife and children. It's really sitting with her. This is obviously an attempt to bury a mistake, continue to bury a mistake, who happens to be a human being named Kilmar Abrego Garcia, by the Trump administration, by sending him on the 31st of October, 5 days before the trial that Judge Crenshaw is planning to hold, kind of need a person being sitting there in order for the trial, about the hearing on vindictive prosecution. They already know from Crenshaw's prior ruling that he's bending over towards the defense side and is very close to ruling that this was vindictively prosecuted and therefore should be dismissed. Fearing that, and fearing the hearing, and fearing the discovery, and fearing and triggered by the Todd Blanche taking the stand. And so for people out there that are critical, we want critical minds in our audience, who are thinking, why would Todd Blanche? I mean, the number two, yeah, because Judge Crenshaw said in his order that the number one piece of evidence for him that suggests vindictive prosecution, either presumptively or actually, is Todd Blanche going on Fox with Laura Ingraham and making a statement about, well, we indicted because Judge Xinis in Maryland challenged us. He said, well, that seems like pretty good evidence. So of course, Todd Blanche would have to testify based on that kind of finding. So now the ball, I think that the powers, inherent authority of the criminal judge Crenshaw are kind of limited here. I don't think he could maybe issue an order. Listen, he's not going anywhere. We've got a hearing on vindictive prosecution. He's the criminal defendant. He stays. Could happen. But Judge Xinis, who is, as you noted earlier, is the constitutional due process judge, who said, I want notice. The reason we got a notice that we've talked about, this literally that just says notice. I posted it on Legal AF Substack so people could read it for themselves. The reason is because Judge Xinis had said he is staying in Virginia unless and until. I understand there's an immigration process that's going on, but he is not to be sent anywhere unless I am given notice. Okay, here's your notice, Judge. We're sending him to Liberia. It's a very nice place. It's got a capitol named after James Monroe. I mean, this is the stuff they wrote like they were writing a brochure for travel. Like, hey, everybody, want to visit Liberia? No. And what his lawyers have come out and said, Abrego Garcia, is that we've offered Costa Rica, which is close to his family, is Spanish speaking, and they're trying to vindictively punish us and prosecute us all over again. Now, what they originally had offered, because this is where the vindictiveness comes in for our audience, among many examples, they offered to let him go, Abrego Garcia, to Costa Rica. He had to agree to confess and admit guilt in the human trafficking case in Tennessee. And his lawyer said, no, drop the charges and we'll agree to let him go to Costa Rica. So the fight right now is the Trump administration saying, no, you'll go where we say you're going to go. And since you didn't take our deal and you made us and you're embarrassing us every day in court, you're now going to go to Liberia. Here's what the lawyer for Abrego Garcia said, Simon Sandoval Moschenberg. After failed attempts with Uganda, Eswatini, and Ghana, ICE now seeks to deport our client to Liberia, a country with which he has no connection, thousands of miles from his family and home in Maryland. Costa Rica stands ready, the lawyer wrote, to accept him as a refugee, a viable and lawful option. Yet, the government has chosen a course calculated to inflict maximum hardship. These actions are punitive, they're cruel, and they're unconstitutional. So, after the show is over, you can come over to Legal AF Substack. So I'm sure I'm going to be doing an update about Judge Xinis pulling everybody together over the weekend, if not on Monday, to talk about why Liberia. At some point, Ben, I believe she has the inherent and equitable power, I'm going to go on a limb here, to even grant asylum based on the abuse of the constitutional due process rights of him. Just like she would be able to let somebody out of jail if they were being abused and tortured in an American prison. I think she's got that power. She's been letting it play out, watching all the chess pieces in Tennessee, in the immigration court, and here. But she's shown that she's got the gravitas and the power to do it. She got a firm 9-0 by the United States Supreme Court when she ordered that Donald Trump and his administration facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia from the torture prison. He was literally tortured upon arrival in El Salvador. It was affirmed by the Fourth Circuit twice. And now she's got his liberty and our entire justice system in the palms of her hands. Get ready for the hearing with Judge Xinis. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. Every Wednesday and Saturday, the full-length podcast here on the Midas Touch Network or on Legal AF, a commercial-free version on Legal AF Substack. Help us continue to grow, right? We're fueled by our Legal AF community. The more you support us, the less likely it is that we'll be taken off the air. That's the way it works. So think about becoming a subscriber, Legal AF YouTube, a paid subscriber or member on Legal AF Substack for less than $7 a month. Go check out the content. I think you'll be impressed. I think you'll enjoy it and help us continue to support and grow this Legal AF podcast here on YouTube and on all audio platforms as well. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.